Welcome to True Night Crime, where we dive deep into the shadows of real mysteries that still haunt us today. Tonight we examine a case that epitomizes the dangers of hysteria, flawed justice, and the fight for truth, the West Memphis Three. In 1993, three young boys were brutally murdered in Arkansas, sparking a witch hunt fueled by satanic panic that led to the wrongful convictions of three teenagers, Damian Echols, Jesse Miskelly, and Jason Baldwin. Imprisoned for 18 years, including Echols on death row, they were released in 2011 under controversial circumstances, but questions linger. Who really killed those boys? And will new DNA testing finally bring exoneration? Join me as we unravel this tragic tale of injustice and the ongoing quest for answers. The tragedy unfolded in the small town of West Memphis, Arkansas, a working-class community across the Mississippi River from Memphis, Tennessee. On May 5, 1993, three second-grade boys, Christopher Byers, Stevie Branch and Michael Moore, all 8 years old, went missing after riding their bikes in the neighborhood. They were last seen around 6:30 p.m. near Robin Hood Hills, a wooded area known for teenage hangouts and rumored illicit activities. Frantic searches began that night, involving police, firefighters, and volunteers. The next afternoon, May 6th, a gruesome discovery. The boys' bodies were found submerged in a drainage ditch in the woods, naked, hogtied with their own shoelaces, right ankle to right wrist, left to left. They'd been beaten severely. Christopher suffered horrific mutilations, including genital injuries initially thought to be ritualistic, but later attributed to animal predation post-mortem. Autopsies revealed drowning as the cause of death for two, with Christopher dying from multiple injuries and blood loss. No blood at the scene suggested they were killed elsewhere and dumped. The community was devastated, demanding swift justice amid fears of a predator on the loose. Police, under immense pressure, fumbled from the start. Led by Chief Inspector Gary Gitchell, the investigation was marred by lost evidence, contaminated scenes, and tunnel vision. Early suspects included the boys' families. Stevie's stepfather John Mark Byers, with a violent history and odd behavior, became a media target. But soon, the probe veered into the occult. The early 90s were rife with satanic panic, moral hysteria over devil worship, heavy metal, and role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons. Rumors swirled of cult rituals in the woods. Enter Damian Echols, an 18-year-old outsider with long black hair, an interest in Wicca, and a history of mental health issues. He wore black, listened to Metallica, and had a juvenile record for minor offenses. His friends, 16-year-old Jason Baldwin, a quiet skateboarding fan, and 17-year-old Jesse Miskelly, with an IQ of 72 and developmental delays, were pulled into the net. A tip from a juvenile probation officer painted Echols as a Satanist capable of murder, despite no evidence. The turning point came on June 3, 1993, nearly a month after the murders, when police interrogated Miskelly for over 12 hours, without a parent or lawyer present. Jesse, intellectually disabled and suggestible, initially denied involvement but, after leading questions and false promises, confessed to witnessing Echols and Baldwin rape, beat, and kill the boys in a satanic ritual. His statement was riddled with inaccuracies. Wrong time of day, he said night, but boys disappeared in daylight. Incorrect injuries, and details fed by interrogators. No recording of the first 11 hours existed, only a 46-minute taped portion where Jesse parroted suggestions. Despite this, he implicated the others, leading to their arrests that day. Echols and Baldwin protested innocence. Miskelly later recanted, saying he was coerced, but the damage was done. The press frenzy labeled them cult killers, tainting the jury pool. Trials began in 1994, separate due to Miskelly's refusal to testify against the others. First, Miskelly in Clay County, prosecutors leaned on his confession, ignoring coercion claims. A cult expert with a mail-order PhD testified about satanic symbols, like Echols' pentagram tattoos. Despite weak evidence, no physical links, alibis for the teens, Jesse was convicted of 1 first-degree and 2 second-degree murders, sentenced to life plus 40 years. Then, Echols and Baldwin in Jonesboro. Miskelly's confession was inadmissible, but leaked details influenced the case. Prosecutors presented fibers similar to those from the teens' homes, later debunked as common. A knife from a lake near Baldwin's, no blood match. And Echols' occult writings. Witnesses, including 2 girls who overheard Echols confess at a softball game, later admitted lying for attention. No DNA, fingerprints, or solid forensics tied them. Yet, amid satanic hysteria, the jury convicted Baldwin life without parole, Echols death by lethal injection. The West Memphis Three were born. Appeals dragged on, but doubt grew. In 1996, HBO's Paradise Lost: The Child Murders at Robin Hood Hills exposed the trial's flaws, sparking global outrage. Celebrities like Johnny Depp, Eddie Vedder, and Henry Rollins rallied, funding investigations. New evidence emerged. Alibis strengthened, fiber matches disproven, and bite mark claims on victims ruled out. No human bites. A hair on a shoelace matched Terry Hobbs, Stevie's stepfather, who had a violent past and inconsistent alibi. Another hair linked to Hobbs's friend David Jacoby. Witnesses recanted, including Vicky Hutchison, who admitted fabricating Echols' confession under police pressure. Miss Kelly's confession was dissected as false, coerced from a vulnerable teen. Forensic pathologist Dr. Michael Baden concluded the mutilations were post-mortem animal activity, not ritual. By 2007, DNA testing on evidence found no matches to the 3 but foreign profiles on the hairs. The tide turned in 2010 when the Arkansas Supreme Court ordered evidentiary hearings on new DNA and misconduct claims. Facing retrials they might lose, prosecutors offered an Alford plea. The 3 could maintain innocence while pleading guilty, receiving time served, 18 years, and release. On August 19, 2011, they accepted, walking free but with convictions intact. No exoneration, no lawsuits possible. Echols moved to New York, writing books like Life After Death. Baldwin founded Proclaim Justice. Miss Kelly returned to Arkansas quietly, but the fight continued. Families of the victims split, some believing innocence, others not. Hobbs denied involvement, suing filmmakers. Alternative suspects like Mr. Bojangles, a bloodied man seen near the crime scene, were never fully pursued. As of 2026, the case remains a symbol of wrongful conviction, with ongoing efforts for full exoneration. In 2020, Echols petitioned for advanced DNA testing on ligatures and hairs, using MVAC technology, capable of detecting touch DNA. After denials and appeals, the Arkansas Supreme Court ruled in his favor in April 2024, remanding for hearings. In August 2025, a Crittenden County judge ordered testing of hairs, ligatures, and other evidence at Bode Laboratories. By November 2025, items were sent off, with results expected in 2026. Echols' attorney Jeff Rosenzweig stated no evidence ever linked the 3, but biological traces exist that could identify the real killer. If tests exclude the 3 and match others, like Hobbs, or unknowns, it could lead to exoneration and reopened investigations. Victims' families, including Pam Hobbs, Stevie's mom, support testing for closure. Meanwhile, documentaries like Paradise Lost 3 and West of Memphis, plus podcasts, keep the story alive, highlighting coerced confessions, junk science, and bias against outsiders. This case warns of how fear and prejudice can derail justice, robbing innocents of years and leaving killers free. The boys' murders remain unsolved, their memories deserving truth. If you have any thoughts or leads, drop them in the comments. And if this gripped you, hit that like button, subscribe for more mysteries, and comment below. Until next time, stay vigilant in the shadows. Welcome to True Night Crime, where we dive deep into the shadows of real mysteries that still haunt us today. Tonight, we confront a predator who preyed on the innocent in the nation's capital, the Freeway Phantom. From 1971 to 1972, this elusive serial killer abducted, assaulted, and murdered 6 young black girls in Washington, D.C., dumping their bodies along highways like discarded trash. In an era of civil rights struggles and urban unrest, these crimes highlighted racial disparities in investigations, with evidence lost and leads ignored. More than 50 years later, the case remains unsolved, but recent podcasts and forensic pushes keep hope alive for justice. Join me as we trace this phantom's trail and the family's enduring fight for answers. The killings began amid the turbulent early 1970s in Washington, D.C., a city grappling with poverty, racial tensions post-1968 riots, and a burgeoning crack epidemic on the horizon. Southeast D.C., with its working-class black neighborhoods, was hit hardest. On April 25, 1971, 13-year-old Carol Denise Spinks, a shy 7th grader known for her love of double dutch and church choir, was sent by her sister to buy groceries at a 7-Eleven just across the Maryland line in Congress Heights. It was around 7 p.m., a short walk, but Carol never returned. Her family reported her missing, but police dismissed it as a runaway case, common for black girls then. 6 days later, on May 1st, her body was found off I-295 near Suitland Parkway in Prince George's County, Maryland. She'd been raped, strangled, and showed signs of being held captive, fed burgers and fries before death. Her clothes were intact, but the location near a freeway earned the killer his moniker. Investigators noted no struggle at the dump site, suggesting murder elsewhere. The community mourned, but with no witnesses, the case went cold fast. Just over 2 months later, the phantom struck again. On July 8, 1971, 16-year-old Darlenia Denise Johnson vanished while walking to her summer job at a recreation center in Oxon Hill, Maryland. Described as outgoing and responsible, she was last seen near her home. 11 days passed before her decomposed body was discovered on July 19 off I-295, mere yards from where Carol was found. Like Carol, she'd been raped and strangled, her body too decayed for full autopsy details. Police linked the cases, but kept it quiet to avoid panic. Then, only 9 days after Darlenia's body surfaced, 10-year-old Brenda Faye Crockett disappeared on July 27 while on an errand to a nearby store in Northwest D.C. Around 8 p.m., she called home twice, first saying a white man took her but she was okay, then whispering she was in Virginia with a man who'd send her home in a taxi. Her voice sounded scared, as if reading from a script. Hours later, her body was found off Route 50, in Prince George's County, strangled, raped, and clothed. Green synthetic fibers on her hinted at evidence, but the calls suggested the killer toyed with families. Fear now gripped DC's black communities. Parents kept kids indoors and whispers of a freeway stalker spread. The murders accelerated. On October 1, 1971, 12-year-old Nenemoshia Yates went missing after a quick trip to a Safeway store in Northeast D.C. for sugar. Witnesses saw her walking home, but she vanished blocks away. 6 days later, on October 7th, her body turned up off Pennsylvania Avenue in Prince George's County. Raped, strangled, and with abrasions suggesting a struggle. Like the others, green fibers clung to her clothes. Police formed a task force, but jurisdictional squabbles between D.C., Maryland, and federal agencies hampered progress. Media coverage was minimal compared to white victims, fueling accusations of racism. Then, on November 15, 1971, 18-year-old Brenda Denise Woodard disappeared after dinner with a friend near her home. Her body was found the next day off Route 202 in Prince George's County, stabbed and strangled. In a chilling taunt, a note in her coat pocket, written in her handwriting but dictated by the killer, read, "This is tantamount to my insensitivity to people, especially women. I will admit the others when you catch me, if you can. Freeway Phantom." The misspelled tantamount and signature confirmed a serial killer, but handwriting analysis yielded nothing. The final known victim was 17-year-old Diane Denise Williams, abducted on September 5, 1972, after visiting her boyfriend in Southeast D.C. She was last seen boarding a bus home. Hours later, her body was discovered off I-295, raped and strangled, the 6th in 17 months. All victims were young black females, abducted in broad daylight from safe neighborhoods, held briefly, assaulted, and dumped near interstates. Similarities: all strangled manually or with ligatures, most clothed, with green carpet fibers and dog hairs as potential clues. The killer seemed local, familiar with back roads, perhaps a cab driver or someone with a car posing as authority. But after Diane, the murders stopped, maybe due to increased patrols, or the killer's death, or incarceration. The FBI joined in 1972, profiling a black male, 20s-30s, with a grudge against women, possibly impotent, yet no arrests. Suspects surfaced over years, exposing investigative flaws. Early on, the Green Vega Gang, a group of black men involved in abductions, was probed. Member Melvin Hickey confessed details but recanted before dying in prison. Robert Askins, a convicted rapist with a history of stranglings and the word tantamount in his appeals, was linked, searched in 1977, but no charges. In 2006, inmate John Davis claimed a deceased uncle was the killer. More recently, in 2018, serial killer Samuel Little was eyed but ruled out. Evidence mishandling plagued the case. Files lost in floods, fibers destroyed, no DNA until modern tech. In 2023, a podcast, Freeway Phantom, by iHeartRadio and Tenderfoot TV revived interest, offering rewards and new tips, but no breakthroughs. Families criticized racial bias, comparing to white-centric cases like John Benet Ramsey. As of 2026, the case is still open with MPD's Cold Case Unit. A 2024 Washington City paper report revealed a missing 1970s FBI report, potentially key, with files set for release in January 2026. Genetic genealogy is being explored on remaining evidence like hairs and fibers, though degradation poses challenges. In 2025, a WIDA documentary highlighted the gruesomes, urging preservation of cold case evidence for 65 years minimum. Victims' families, like Carol's sister Evander, continue advocating via vigils and the Black and Missing Foundation. Theories persist: a cop or insider evading capture, multiple killers, or a transient long gone. The Phantom's taunt echoes: will we ever catch him? Pause. These abductions expose how marginalized voices are silenced, leaving killers in the shadows. The girls, Carol, Darlania, Brenda, Nenemoshia, Brenda, Diane, deserve justice. Their stories a call to remember the overlooked. If you have any thoughts or leads, drop them in the comments. And, if this chilled you to the bone, hit that like button, subscribe for more mysteries, and comment below. Until next time, stay vigilant in the shadows. Pause. Welcome to True Night Crime, where we dive deep into the shadows of real mysteries that still haunt us today. Tonight, we travel back to the swinging yet sinister streets of 1960s Glasgow, Scotland, for the chilling saga of Bible John, a Bible-quoting serial killer who stalked young women at a popular dance hall, strangling 3 victims and vanishing into legend. Between 1968 and 1969, he turned nights of fun into eternal nightmares, sparking Scotland's largest manhunt. But over 50 years later, his identity remains a ghost, with theories ranging from police cover-ups to links with other notorious killers. Was he a devout deviant, a cop in disguise, or even multiple perpetrators? Let's unravel this enduring Scottish enigma. The terror began in the vibrant but gritty East End of Glasgow, a city pulsing with post-war energy, shipyards, and a thriving nightlife scene. The Barrowland Ballroom, a iconic dance hall on Gallowgate Street, was the place to be, packed with young people swaying to Motown beats and live bands under glittering lights. But on February 22, 1968, what started as a carefree evening ended in horror. Patricia Docker, a 25-year-old auxiliary nurse and separated mother of a young son, told her parents she was heading out dancing. Dressed in a mustard wool dress, gray coat, and black heels, she hit several venues before landing at the Barrowland for an over-25s night. She never returned home. The next morning, February 23rd, a resident discovered her naked body in a deserted doorway on Carmichael Place, just yards from her Langside flat. She'd been strangled, possibly with her own stockings, and showed signs of blunt force trauma to the face. Her clothes, handbag, and watch were missing, never recovered, along with a used sanitary towel placed nearby, suggesting a personal or ritualistic touch. No sexual assault was confirmed, but the scene screamed foul play. Police initially treated it as a one-off, perhaps a domestic dispute, but leads fizzled amid the city's underbelly of vice and violence. 18 months passed, and Glasgow moved on, until the nightmare resurfaced. On August 15, 1969, Jemima MacDonald, a 32-year-old mother of 3 known as Mima, left her kids with her sister Margaret and headed to the Barrowland for a night out. Dressed sharply, in a black dress and brown sandals, she was last seen leaving the hall around midnight with a tall, slim man in a suit. When she didn't return, Margaret grew worried. Rumors swirled among local kids about a body in a derelict tenement on McKee Street. On August 18th, Margaret investigated herself and found Jemima's fully clothed body hidden under rubble in an abandoned building. Like Patricia, she'd been strangled, beaten about the head, and sexually assaulted. Her stockings were wrapped around her neck, and a sanitary towel was nearby. Another eerie parallel. Witnesses recalled seeing her with a well-dressed man, about 25-35, with short, reddish-fair hair. Police linked it to Patricia's case, realizing a predator was hunting women from the Barrowland. Fear spread, but the dance hall stayed open, its allure undimmed. Just 2 months later, the killer struck again, providing the crucial clue that named him. On October 30, 1969, Halloween night, 29-year-old Helen Puttock, a married mother of 2 boys, joined her sister Jean Langford at the Barrowland. Helen, outgoing and stylish in a black dress and fur coat, met a man who introduced himself as John. He was polite, well-spoken, with a Glasgow accent softened by posh undertones. The trio shared a taxi home around 12:45 a.m., with John in the middle. During the ride, he quoted Bible verses, railing against dens of iniquity like the Barrowland and calling married women there adulterous. He mentioned Old Testament stories of Moses and claimed a cousin on the Glasgow police golf team. Dropped off in Scottstown, Helen walked off with him. The next morning, October 31st, a dog walker found her body in a back garden on Earl Street, strangled with her stockings, beaten, and partially nude. Grass and dirt under her nails suggested a struggle. A sanitary towel was under her arm. Jean's detailed description painted a portrait. 25-35 years old, 5'10" to 6'2" tall, slim, reddish-fair hair neatly combed, blue-gray suit, light shirt, brown shoes, and crucially, overlapping front teeth with one missing. This Bible John moniker stuck, fueling media frenzy. The investigation became Scotland's biggest manhunt, led by Detective Superintendent Joe Beattie. Over 100 detectives interviewed 50,000 people, took 14,000 statements, and checked 300 Johns and 200 dentists for the distinctive teeth. The first police photo fit in Scotland was created from Jean's account, plastered everywhere. Undercover cops infiltrated the Barrowland, and a psychological profile suggested a religious fanatic with mommy issues, possibly impotent or disgusted by menstruation, given the sanitary towel pattern. But no arrests. Theories abounded. Was he a sailor or salesman explaining the gaps, or a local evading capture? Some doubted a single killer. Patricia's body was hidden differently, her clothes gone, unlike the others dumped openly. Could Bible John be a copycat for the last 2? Yet similarities in victim profiles, all young mothers, menstruating, strangled post-Barrowland, pointed to one man. The killings stopped after Helen, perhaps scared off by publicity. Suspects emerged over decades, keeping the case alive. In 1996, police exhumed John Irvine McInnes, a suicide victim from 1980, whose family tipped off authorities. DNA from semen on Helen's tights was inconclusive due to degradation, but a 2022 BBC podcast, Bible John, Creation of a Serial Killer by Audrey Gillen, claimed McInnes was the killer, alleging a police cover-up. He was cousin to a senior officer, his name scrubbed from records. The podcast prompted Police Scotland to re-examine evidence in 2023, including retesting with modern forensics. Another prime suspect, Peter Tobin, a convicted serial killer and rapist who murdered 3 women in the 2000s and died in 2022. Tobin lived in Glasgow in the 1960s, attended the Barrowland, and had a religious upbringing. Some linked him via MO similarities, strangling, hiding bodies, but lead investigator David Swindle ruled him out in 2022, citing no evidence and doubts the 3 murders were by one man. Other theories: Bible John was a cop, given his golf team mention and evasion, or he fled abroad, perhaps to Spain as a 2022 tip suggested. Profiler David Wilson proposed he was mobile, moving away post-murders. Modern twists keep hope flickering. In 2021, forensic artist Hugh Morrison created updated portraits emphasizing the overlapping teeth, a key identifier never publicized initially. Books, documentaries, and podcasts, like the 2023 BBC series, dissect the misogyny in the original Probe, where victims were slut-shamed for dancing while married. As of 2026, the case remains open with Police Scotland. A 2024 review of cold case DNA protocols included Bible John, with calls for genetic genealogy, testing on surviving evidence. No breakthroughs yet, but families, like Helen's sons, now in their 50s, push for closure. The Barrowland still stands, a music venue now, but its dark history lingers. Memorials honor Pat, Mima, and Helen, reminding us of lives cut short. Bible John's shadow proves how one man's evil can scar a city, with justice elusive amid fading clues. Was he McGinnis, Tobin, or forever unknown? The Bible he quoted warns of judgment, perhaps one day it will come. If you have any thoughts or leads, drop them in the comments. And, if this chilled you to the bone, hit that like button, subscribe for more mysteries, and comment below. Until next time, stay vigilant in the shadows. Welcome to True Night Crime, where we dive deep into the shadows of real mysteries that still haunt us today. Tonight, we explore a series of chilling crimes along one of America's most scenic byways, the Colonial Parkway murders. From 1986 to 1989, in Virginia's Tidewater region, at least 4 couples were targeted in lovers' lanes, their vehicles becoming crime scenes of horror. 8 victims murdered, some still missing, in what many believed was the work of a serial killer. But recent breakthroughs have linked a deceased suspect to several cases, bringing partial closure while leaving questions unanswered. Was it one killer or multiple? And will all the puzzles finally be solved? Join me as we drive into this haunting highway of death. The Colonial Parkway, a 23-mile stretch connecting Jamestown, Williamsburg, and Yorktown, is a national treasure, winding through forests, marshes, and historic sites, perfect for romantic drives or quiet escapes. But in the late 1980s it became a killing ground. The spree began on October 12, 1986, when hikers found a white Honda Civic abandoned off a pullout near the Cheatham Annex Overlook. Inside were the bodies of Kathleen "Kathy" Thomas, 27, a U.S. Naval Academy graduate and stockbroker, and Rebecca "Becky" Ann Dowski, 21, a senior at William and Mary College studying business. Both women in a relationship had been strangled with ropes, Becky's throat slashed post-mortem, and their bodies doused in diesel fuel, though not ignited. Their wallets were missing, but no sexual assault was evident. Kathy's car keys were tossed nearby, and drag marks suggested the killer posed them in the hatchback. Police noted the precise knots, hinting at military or nautical experience. The LGBTQ+ community feared a hate crime, but leads dried up amid the area's naval bases and transient population. Nearly a year later, the nightmare continued. On April 10, 1987, Richard Keith Call, 20, a computer science student, and Cassandra Haley, 18, a freshman at Christopher Newport University, vanished after a party. Keith's red Toyota Celica was found abandoned on the parkway near York River Overlook, keys in the ignition, clothes folded inside, as if they'd gone skinny dipping. But no bodies surfaced. Searches of the river yielded nothing, and despite a witness seeing a dark truck nearby, the case stalled. Some link this to the series, though no remains confirm murder. Then, on September 20, 1987, hunters discovered the bodies of David Knobling, 20, a landscaper, and Robin Edwards, 14, a high school freshman, near the James River Bridge on the Isle of Wight shoreline. Not on the parkway, but nearby. They'd been shot with a .38 caliber gun. Robin raped. David's truck was found abandoned at Ragged Island Wildlife Refuge, doors open, radio on, mirroring the staged scenes. Robin's family grieved her innocence lost on what was likely her first date. The pattern escalated on Labor Day weekend 1989. Daniel Lauer, 21, and Anna Maria Phelps, 18, disappeared while driving Daniel's gold Chevy Nova to visit family in Virginia Beach. The car was found on September 5 off I-64 near New Kent Rest Area, overgrown with vegetation, keys, and Anna Maria's purse inside. 6 weeks later, on October 19th, mushroom hunters found their skeletal remains a mile away in the woods, stabbed multiple times, with Anna Maria possibly strangled. No clear sexual assault, but the brutality was evident. By now the FBI joined Virginia State Police, forming a task force for what the media called the Colonial Parkway Killer, targeting couples in secluded spots, often on weekends, with varying MOs: strangulation, shooting, stabbing, no robbery motive, as valuables were left. Profiles suggested a white male, 30s 40s, possibly law enforcement or impersonator, given the victim's compliance. Over 100 suspects were cleared, including a park ranger and ex-cop, sometimes linked or other nearby cases. On January 24, 1988, Newport News couple Brian Pettinger, 27, and Lori Ann Powell, 26, vanished. Brian's car found at a rest stop, but bodies never recovered. And on July 1, 1989, in Hampton, Teresa Lynn Spa Howell, 29, was found strangled near a construction site after leaving a nightclub, similar but not on the parkway. Theories abounded: a rogue cop pulling over victims with a fake badge, a hate-fueled vigilante targeting immoral couples, or multiple killers, given the differing weapons. One chilling lead: a witness saw a man in a ranger uniform near one scene. The area's military presence, Naval Weapons Station, Langley AFB, fueled suspicions of a service member. But evidence was scarce. No DNA in the 80s, just tire tracks and fibers that led nowhere. Families formed support groups, like the Colonial Parkway Murders Families Association, pushing for answers amid fading hope. The case went cold for decades, featured in books like A Special Kind of Evil by Blaine Pardo and podcasts like Mind Over Murder. Then, breakthroughs came via DNA. In January 2024, Virginia State Police announced Alan Wade Wilmer Sr., a deceased fisherman and handyman from Lancaster County, was linked via DNA to the murders of David Nobling and Robin Edwards, plus Teresa Howell's 1980 killing, pre-Parkway. Wilmer, who died in 2017 at 63, had no prior violent record but owned a blue pickup matching witness descriptions. He frequented the areas, worked odd jobs, and his photo resembled composite sketches, but he wasn't tied to all cases. His DNA didn't match Thomas Dowski or others. Families felt mixed relief. Justice denied since he was dead, but closure for some. Fast forward to 2026, and more revelations. On January 20, 2026, the FBI's Norfolk Field Office announced Wilmer was linked to the 1986 murders of Kathleen Thomas and Rebecca Dowski through advanced forensic DNA analysis and case reviews. This brings his confirmed ties to at least 6 murders and disappearances of young people in Virginia from 1986 to 1989, part of the broader Colonial Parkway series involving at least 8 victims. The U.S. Attorney noted sufficient evidence for prosecution if Wilmer were alive. Partnerships with state police and funding from Virginia's Sexual Assault Kit initiative enabled the matches. However, not all cases are resolved. The disappearances of Call Haley and Pettinger Powell remain open, with bodies unfound, and the Lauer Phelps stabbings unlinked to Wilmer so far. FBI continues investigating, urging tips on other potential victims. Families like Kathy's brother, who long suspected a cover-up, welcome the news, but push for full resolution. This series highlights how technology revives cold cases but also the pain of delayed justice. Was Wilmer the sole Parkway killer, or were there copycats? The scenic road now has memorials at pullouts, reminders of lives stolen. If new evidence emerges, it could close the book, or open new chapters. If you have any thoughts or leads, drop them in the comments, and if this gripped you, hit that like button, subscribe for more mysteries, and comment below. Until next time, stay vigilant in the shadows. Welcome to True Night Crime, where we dive deep into the shadows of real mysteries that still haunt us today. Tonight we venture into the remote Sierra Nevada mountains of Northern California for a harrowing tale of brutality and baffling inaction: the Keddie Cabin murders. In 1981, a quadruple homicide in a rundown resort cabin left 3 bound and bludgeoned bodies discovered, and 1 young girl vanished, her fate uncovered years later. Amid whispers of corrupt cops, neighborly suspects and lost evidence, this case has lingered unsolved for over 4 decades, a stark reminder of small-town secrets and systemic failures. As we sift through the blood-stained clues, questions persist. Was it a drug deal gone wrong, a personal vendetta, or something more sinister? Join me in unpacking this chilling California enigma. Keddie, California, in 1981 was a fading logging town in Plumas County. A cluster of weathered cabins in the Keddie Resort, once a bustling getaway but now a low-rent haven for the down and out. Amid the pines and poverty lived Glenna Sue Sharp, a 36-year-old single mother fleeing an abusive marriage in Connecticut. With her 5 children, Sheila 14, John 15, Rick 10, Greg 5, and Tina 12, she rented Cabin 28, a dilapidated 2-story unit for $170 a month. Sue worked odd jobs, her kids attended local schools, and life seemed quiet, if strained. On April 11, 1981, a Saturday night, Sue stayed home with Tina and the younger boys, who had friends Justin Eason, 12, and another boy over for a sleepover. John and his best friend, Dana Wingate, 17, a hitchhiking duo known for minor troubles, joined them after thumbing rides around Quincy. Sheila spent the night next door at Cabin 27 with friends. What unfolded that night turned Cabin 28 into a slaughterhouse. The horror was revealed the next morning, April 12th, when Sheila returned around 8 a.m. Pushing open the door, she was met with carnage. Sue, John, and Dana lay dead in the living room, bound with electrical wire and medical tape, their bodies savagely beaten, stabbed, and bludgeoned. Sue was gagged, her wrists and ankles tied together. She'd been struck with a claw hammer, stabbed in the chest, and her throat slashed. John suffered similar wounds, hammer blows, stabs to the throat and heart. Dana, bound separately, showed signs of manual strangulation alongside hammer and knife injuries. Blood-spattered walls, furniture overturned, but oddly, no fingerprints or forced entry. A Daisy 880 BB rifle was bent over Dana's head. Missing Tina, whose bed was empty, sheets rumpled. Incredibly, the 3 young boys, Rick, Greg, and Justin, slept unharmed in the back bedroom, claiming they heard nothing despite thin walls. No screams, no struggle audible over the night. Plumas County Sheriff's deputies arrived, but the scene was quickly compromised. Neighbors trampled through, evidence mishandled, no proper photos of footprints outside. Autopsies confirmed the deaths occurred between 1:30 and 3:30 a.m., with weapons including the hammer, missing from the scene. 2 knives, one a steak knife, another a butcher knife bent from force, and possibly more. Tina's disappearance shifted the case to abduction amid murder. Searches of the surrounding woods and rivers yielded nothing immediate. The community reeled. Keddie's 100 residents locked doors. Rumors flew of satanic cults or drug hits given John's minor pot dealings. But focus soon fell on neighbors. Marty Smart, a volatile veteran in Cabin 26, with his wife Marilyn and stepson Justin, the sleepover friend, and Smart's buddy John Bo Bubaid, a shady ex-con with Chicago mob ties, staying with them. Suspicions mounted fast. Marilyn told police Marty hated John Sharp, calling him a punk. Days after the murders, Marty confessed to his therapist about killing Sue for meddling in his marriage, and the others, but claimed no knowledge of Tina. The therapist reported it, but deputies dismissed it as hearsay. Marty and Bo fled Keddie soon after, burning clothes in their stove. A letter from Marty to Marilyn, found in 2013, eerily stated, "I've paid the price of your love, and now that I've bought it with 4 people's lives, you tell me we are through." Yet despite polygraphs, Marty passed, Bo failed, no arrests. Other leads, a mysterious call to Sue's ex-husband in Connecticut days before, hinting at threats, sightings of Tina with unknown men, and Justin's conflicting stories. He initially described dreaming of the murders. Later hypnosis revealed seeing a struggle involving Marty and Bo. The case stagnated amid allegations of corruption. Sheriff Doug Thomas was friends with Marty, and the DOJ probe found evidence ignored. In 1984, Tina's skull was found 29 miles away in Butte County, near Feather Falls, identified via dental records. Her remains scattered by animals, Cause of death undetermined but likely homicide. No clothing or clues. The murders were now confirmed quadruple. Over decades, tips poured in. A 1990s confession from a prison inmate fingering a gang. Theories of a cover-up tied to local drugs or even the Zodiac. Dismissed. But revival came in 2013, when Sheriff Greg Hagwood reopened it, appointing investigator Mike Gamberg. Breakthroughs followed. In 2016, a claw hammer was dredged from a Keddy pond, matching one Marty claimed lost, tested for DNA but inconclusive. In 2018, DNA from tape at the scene matched a living suspect, identity withheld, but speculated to be connected to Marty Bow Circle. Gamberg uncovered lost evidence like the letter and unprocessed fingerprints. A 2021 documentary, Murder in the Mountains, and podcasts like Crime Junkie amplified calls for justice. Marty died in 2000, Bow in 1988, but others, like a surviving associate, remain persons of interest. As of 2026, the case remains unsolved, but Plumas County persists. A January 2026 cold case review by the California DOJ, prompted by new genetic genealogy pushes, retested items like the hammer and tape, with preliminary matches to known profiles but no charges yet. Families, including Sheila, now an advocate, hold annual vigils at the Cabin 28 site, demolished in 2004, now a memorial plaque. Theories linger: a botched robbery, jealousy over Sue rejecting Marty, or Tina as the target in a pedophile ring. The unharmed boys add mystery. Was the killer known, sparing them? Keddy's ghosts demand answers, a testament to overlooked rural horrors. This massacre exposes how isolation and indifference let evil thrive, leaving a family shattered and a killer free. If you have any thoughts or leads, drop them in the comments. And if this chilled you to the bone, hit that like button, subscribe for more mysteries, and comment below. Until next time, stay vigilant in the shadows. Welcome to True Night Crime, where we dive deep into the shadows of real mysteries that still haunt us today. Tonight, we turn back the clock to the dusty streets of 1880s Austin, Texas, a booming frontier town on the cusp of modernity, for the gruesome tale of the servant girl annihilator. From 1884 to 1885, this phantom killer stalked the night, wielding axes and irons to slaughter 8 victims, mostly black and Hispanic servant women, in a spree that terrorized the city. Dubbed by author O. Henry, the case predates Jack the Ripper by 3 years and remains unsolved, with theories ranging from a vengeful local to the Ripper himself starting in America. As Austin grew from a sleepy capital to a hub of progress, this annihilator turned homes into slaughterhouses, exposing racial divides and investigative chaos. Let's uncover the blood-soaked secrets of Texas's first serial killer. Austin in the mid-1880s was a city in flux, population swelling to 23,000 with railroads, universities, and immigrants fueling growth. Gas lamps flickered on dirt roads, and grand Victorian homes employed domestic servants, often black women freed post-Civil War or Mexican immigrants. But beneath the progress lurked danger. The killings began quietly on December 30, 1884, with Molly Smith, a 25-year-old black cook living in a servant cabin behind her employer's West Pecan Street home. That night, neighbors heard screams. Molly was found in the snow-covered yard, her skull cleaved by an axe, raped, and mutilated. Her boyfriend, Walter Spencer, lay nearby, severely wounded, but alive. The axe was left embedded in her head, footprints led away into the night. Police dismissed it as a domestic spat, arresting Spencer despite his injuries. He was acquitted, but the murder set a pattern. Attacks on servants in their quarters, dragged outside, assaulted, and killed with household tools. The annihilator struck again on May 6, 1885, targeting Eliza Shelley, a 30-year-old black widow and mother of 3, working as a cook on Cypress Street. Her screams woke her children. She was axed in bed, her face nearly unrecognizable, then dragged to an outhouse and raped. Her kids, aged 4 to 11, saw the horror but couldn't describe the intruder. Just 3 weeks later, on May 23, Irene Cross, a 33-year-old black domestic on East Cedar Street, was attacked in her home. An assailant used a knife or hatchet to scalp her and slash her arm nearly off. She bled out before help arrived. Panic brewed among servants who began quitting jobs or arming themselves. Austin's papers sensationalized the fiend, speculating a gang or supernatural force, while racial tensions simmered. White employers feared losing labor, black communities felt unprotected. The summer brought no respite. On August 30, 1885, Mary Ramey, an 11-year-old black girl helping her mother Lucinda Body in their Blanco Street cabin, was axed in bed. Lucinda was wounded but survived. Mary was dragged to a wash house, raped and mutilated with an iron rod through her ears. Lucinda described a black man in rags, but details were vague. Police rounded up suspects haphazardly, often based on race. Then, on September 28, 1885, the killer targeted Gracie Vance, a 20-year-old black servant, and her boyfriend Orange Washington in an outbuilding on East Water Street. Both were bludgeoned, Orange with an axe, Gracie with a brick and club. During a party, Gracie was raped and dragged away, her body found in an alley with a sandbag chain around her neck. 2 other men at the scene were wounded. Footprints and a bloody axe pointed to a calculated attack. Hundreds were questioned, including a wild-eyed man seen nearby, but no breaks. The Annihilator escalated, crossing racial lines. On Christmas Eve 1885, Susan Sue Hancock, a 45-year-old white housewife, was axed in her West Hickory Street bedroom while her husband Moses slept. Dragged to the backyard, she was left alive briefly, whispering of a shadowy figure. She died the next day. That same night, just hours later, Eula Phillips, a 17-year-old white newlywed and mother, was attacked on West 6th Street. Axed in bed beside her sleeping husband James and infant son, she was dragged outside, raped, and mutilated with a timber across her neck. James was arrested, convicted of murder amid rumors of her infidelity, but his sentence was overturned. He walked free. These final attacks shattered Austin's illusion of safety, with the killer striking 2 homes miles apart in one night. The spree ended abruptly after Christmas, with no more murders attributed to him. The investigation was a farce by modern standards. Austin's small police force, led by Marshal Grooms Lee, lacked forensics, no fingerprints, DNA, or profiling. They relied on bloodhounds, which failed spectacularly, attacking innocents, rewards up to $1,000, and hired Pinkerton detectives. Over 400 arrests, mostly of black men, led to lynchings and beatings, exposing racism. White victims got more attention. Suspects included Jimmy Phillips, Eula's husband, convicted then freed, Moses Hancock, Sue's husband, acquitted, and various transients like a Malay cook named Maurice, who vanished. One theory: Nathan Elgin, a 19-year-old black man killed by police in 1886 after assaulting a girl. His peg leg matched footprints, and he lived near victims, but no confession or evidence. Theories exploded: a gang of black men seeking revenge, a white supremacist terrorizing minorities, or a lone sadist with a foot fetish. Many victims' feet were targeted. Most intriguing, links to Jack the Ripper. In 1888, similar mutilations in London prompted speculation. The Annihilator sailed to England. O. Henry, then an Austin resident, coined the nickname in a letter, joking about our Jack the Ripper. H. Holmes was eyed, but timelines don't match. Some suggest multiple killers, given varying MOs, axes, knives, clubs, but patterns like moonlight attacks and outhouse drags suggest one. The case faded as Austin modernized with electricity and phones, reducing night vulnerabilities. No more murders matched after 1885. Perhaps the killer died, moved, or was jailed for else. Victims were buried in Oakwood Cemetery, some unmarked. The Annihilator claimed 8 lives: Molly Smith, Eliza Shelley, Irene Cross, Mary Ramey, Gracie Vance, Orange Washington, Sue Hancock, Eula Phillips, plus wounded survivors. As of 2026, the case remains unsolved, but interest surges. Kate Winkler Dawson's podcast Tenfold More Wicked and Buried Bones revisited it in 2025 for the 140th anniversary, favoring Nathan Elgin as the culprit based on footprints and proximity. A 2025 Medium article explored the killer who walked through locked doors, noting how he entered homes undetected. Books like Stephen Saylor's 2000 novel, A Twist at the End, fictionalize it, while a 2022 podcast Devilish Deeds detailed victim stories. In 2024, Travis County Archives digitized more documents, including autopsies, sparking amateur sleuths. Genetic genealogy is floated for any surviving evidence, though little exists. Austin tours now include Annihilator sites, and a 2026 True Crime Conference in Texas plans a panel. Families' descendants seek recognition, highlighting how race and class buried the story. This Annihilator reminds us serial killers aren't modern. Evil has always lurked in the night, evading justice through chaos and bias. Austin's bright lights today can't erase the bloodstains of its past. If you have any thoughts or leads, drop them in the comments. And, if this chilled you to the bone, hit that like button, subscribe for more mysteries, and comment below. Until next time, stay vigilant in the shadows. Welcome to True Night Crime, where we dive deep into the shadows of real mysteries that still haunt us today. Tonight, we revisit one of the most terrifying unsolved sprees in American history, the Texarkana Phantom, also known as the Moonlight Murders of 1946. In a sleepy border town, split between Texas and Arkansas, a masked killer stalked lovers' lanes under the full moon, attacking 8 people in 10 weeks and leaving 5 dead. The crimes paralyzed the community, inspired a classic horror film, and spawned endless theories, but the Phantom was never caught. More than 75 years later, with fresh podcasts, books, and even AI recreations keeping the case alive, we ask, was it one sadistic local, a gang, or something darker? Let's step back into the terror that made an entire town dread sundown. Texarkana in 1946 was a classic post-World War II boomtown, railroads humming, soldiers returning home, and a population of about 40,000 split right down the state line. Couples cruised the back roads in their cars, seeking privacy under the moonlight, but starting in February, those romantic spots became killing fields. The nightmare opened on February 22nd, just after midnight on a secluded Bowie County road. Jimmy Hollis, 25, and his girlfriend Mary Jean Larry, 19, were parked when a tall man, in a white hood or cloth mask, approached with a flashlight and pistol. He ordered Hollis out, beat him unconscious with the gun, then turned on Larry. She was beaten, sexually assaulted with the pistol barrel, and left for dead. Both survived, but their attacker vanished into the night. Police dismissed it as a one-off assault. No one imagined a serial predator was just getting started. Exactly 1 month later, on March 24th, the horror escalated. Richard Griffin, 29, and his girlfriend Polly Ann Moore, 17, were found shot execution-style in the back of the head inside Griffin's parked car on a lover's lane off Highway 67. The killer had forced them to kneel outside first, then dragged them back in. No robbery, no sexual assault, just cold-blooded murder. Panic began to ripple through town. Then came the most infamous attack. On April 14th, 17-year-old Paul Martin and 15-year-old Betty Jo Booker, a popular high school saxophonist returning from a gig, were ambushed at the entrance to Spring Lake Park. Martin was shot 9 times, Booker 4. Their bodies were discovered the next day. Martin's car hidden off the road. Again, the killer struck under moonlight and disappeared like a ghost. The Texarkana Gazette dubbed him the Phantom Killer, and the whole city locked down after dark. Schools let out early, businesses closed at dusk, and armed citizens patrolled the streets. The final strike shattered any sense of safety. On May 3rd, 37-year-old farmer Virgil Starks was relaxing in his rural Arkansas farmhouse when shots rang out through the window. He was hit twice in the head and died instantly. His wife Katie was wounded by flying glass and bullets, but survived, fleeing to neighbors while the Phantom fled empty-handed. This wasn't a lover's lane attack, it was a brazen home invasion, proving the killer could strike anywhere. In just 10 weeks, 5 people were dead, 3 wounded, and the town was in full terror. Schools let out early, businesses closed at dusk, and armed citizens patrolled the streets. The attacks even crossed state lines, complicating jurisdiction between Texas and Arkansas authorities. The manhunt was massive. Texas Rangers, FBI agents, and local police interviewed thousands, chased hundreds of tips, and arrested over 400 suspects. Bloodhounds, roadblocks, and even a curfew failed. The killer left almost no clues. 32 caliber bullets from a Colt pistol or revolver, footprints suggesting a size 10 shoe, and that eerie white hood. Survivors described a tall, thin man, possibly in his 20s or 30s, calm and methodical. Rumors exploded, everything from a deranged veteran to a satanic cult, or even a copycat spree. The fear was so real that the 1976 film, The Town That Dreaded Sundown, dramatized it, complete with a hooded killer, and a 2014 remake kept the legend alive. One man emerged as the prime suspect, Swinney, a 29-year-old career criminal with a rap sheet for car theft, counterfeiting, and assault. Arrested after a string of stolen vehicles tied suspiciously to the murder nights, Swinney was grilled relentlessly. His wife Peggy gave a detailed confession, claiming she drove the getaway car, while Swinney committed the killings, even describing specifics that matched crime scenes. But Peggy was deemed unreliable, possibly coerced, and Swinney was never charged with the murders, only car theft. He died in prison in 1994, taking any secrets to the grave. Other theories pointed to a gang of youths, a local cop, or transients riding the rails. Some even wondered if it was multiple killers, given slight differences in the attacks. The case went stone cold, but it never faded. Books like James Presley's The Phantom Killer, 2014, dug deep into archives, arguing Swinney was almost certainly guilty based on Peggy's uncorroborated but eerily accurate details. Podcasts such as Devilish Deeds revisited victim stories in 2023, humanizing the dead and calling out investigative missteps. A 2026 YouTube special even used AI facial reconstruction from witness sketches, sparking online sleuths to speculate on long-dead suspects. FBI files remain public in the vault, and the case is still technically open with the Texas Rangers and Arkansas State Police, though after 80 years, it's considered inactive. No DNA evidence survives from the era, and no deathbed confessions ever surfaced. The Moonlight murders changed Texarkana forever. They inspired curfews that lasted years, memorials for the victims, Richard Griffin, Polly Ann Moore, Paul Martin, Betty Jo Booker, and Virgil Starks, and a lingering unease on those old lovers' lanes. The Moonlight murders changed Texarkana forever. They inspired curfews that lasted years, memorials for the victims, Richard Griffin, Polly Ann Moore, Paul Martin, Betty Jo Booker, and Virgil Starks, and a lingering unease on those old lovers' lanes. The Phantom's identity remains one of Texas's greatest unsolved puzzles, a reminder that some shadows never lift. If you have any thoughts or leads, drop them in the comments, and if this chilled you to the bone, hit that like button, subscribe for more mysteries, and comment below. Until next time, stay vigilant in the shadows. Welcome to True Night Crime, where we dive deep into the shadows of real mysteries that still haunt us today. Tonight we head to the quiet streets and foggy countryside of Friuli Venezia Giulia in northeastern Italy for the terrifying story of the monster of Udine. Between the early 1970s and late 1980s, an unidentified killer targeted vulnerable women, mostly prostitutes, strangling, stabbing, and dumping their bodies in remote fields and ditches around Udine. At least 4 murders are officially linked to him, with up to 12 or more attributed over nearly 2 decades. The killings terrorized the region, sparked rumors of a vigilante or even a surgeon with a twisted mission, and left families shattered. More than 50 years later, the monster of Udine remains one of Italy's most haunting unsolved cases. Join me as we walk through the blood trail that still stains this corner of Italy and explore why justice has remained so elusive. Udine in the 1970s was a modest provincial city of about 100,000 people, nestled near the Slovenian border in one of Italy's most beautiful yet overlooked regions. The years of lead brought political terrorism, economic struggles, and social upheaval across the country. But in Udine, life moved at a slower pace. Factories, farms, and a growing red light scene along the outskirts. Street workers, many of them migrants or local women struggling with addiction and poverty, operated along rural roads and industrial zones. They were easy targets, picked up by clients in cars, driven to isolated spots, and then gone. The killer exploited this vulnerability perfectly. He seemed to know the back roads intimately, struck quickly and efficiently, and vanished without a trace. Unlike the glamorous monster of Florence who targeted couples in lovers' lanes, this monster hunted society's most invisible women, making his crimes easier for authorities to dismiss or downplay. The nightmare began quietly in the early 1970s. The first confirmed victim was discovered in 1971, a young woman found strangled and stabbed in a ditch outside Udine. Her body showed defensive wounds, suggesting a fierce struggle, yet the case was filed away as a possible crime of passion. Similar attacks followed in 1973 and 1974. Women picked up late at night, driven short distances, killed with a knife or ligature, and left partially undressed in fields or drainage ditches. Police at the time lacked coordination between local forces and the Carabinieri, and evidence was often contaminated or simply lost. By the late 1970s, the pattern was becoming impossible to ignore, but the victim's profession meant many cases were initially written off as drug-related disputes or domestic violence. The killings reached a horrifying peak in the 1980s. On January 24, 1983, 22-year-old Luana Giamporcaro, a young sex worker trying to support her family, was found murdered near Udine. She had been strangled with a ligature and stabbed multiple times. Her body was dumped in a field just a few kilometers from the city center. Witnesses later recalled seeing her get into a dark-colored car with a polite, well-dressed man earlier that evening. Then, on March 15, 1985, 42-year-old Aurelia Yanushewicz met the same fate. Strangled, stabbed, and left in a rural ditch. Both women had been transported only a short distance from where they were last seen, suggesting the killer felt safe and familiar with the terrain. The newspapers, finally, gave the unknown assailant a name: Il Mostro di Udine. Panic spread like wildfire among the city's sex workers. Many began working in pairs, carrying knives for protection, or refusing clients after dark. Local bars and clubs along the main roads emptied out as fear took hold. Investigators struggled from the beginning. The monster left almost no usable forensic evidence, no fingerprints, no semen, no distinctive fibers. He killed quickly, often with a single deep stab or strangulation, then arranged the bodies in a strangely methodical way, sometimes covering them with branches or leaves. Survivors who escaped earlier attacks described a soft-spoken man in his 30s or 40s, driving a common Italian sedan, who paid up front and seemed almost gentlemanly, until the moment he struck. One woman who survived in 1984 told police he had surgeon's hands, calm and precise, fueling rumors that the killer was a doctor, medical student, or even a butcher who knew exactly how to avoid leaving traces. Hundreds of men were questioned over the years: truck drivers, factory workers, local doctors, even a priest with a shady past, but every lead fizzled. A few suspects were briefly arrested, only to be released when alibis held up or evidence didn't match. Theories about the monster's identity multiplied with each passing year. Some believed he was a religious vigilante, cleansing the streets of sin, quoting Bible verses or acting out of twisted morality. Others pointed to a possible surgeon or medical professional, citing the clean, almost clinical wounds on some victims. A popular theory linked him to the nearby military base or even cross-border smuggling routes near Slovenia. There were whispers of a cover-up. Perhaps the killer had connections to local power, or the police themselves. By the late 1980s, the murders appeared to stop abruptly. Some investigators believed the total death toll could be as high as 12 or even 16 when including similar unsolved cases across the province between 1971 and 1989. The killer may have died, moved away, been imprisoned for another crime, or simply grown too old to continue. For decades, the case faded from public attention, buried under newer crimes and Italy's endless political scandals. Victims' families, many of whom never received proper funerals or recognition, suffered in silence. Then, in the 2010s and 2020s, true crime podcasts and documentaries brought the monster of Udine back into the spotlight. Italian podcasts like Il Mostro di Udine and international series examined the misogyny that allowed the case to stagnate. In 2023, a major documentary on Rai 2 featured new interviews with surviving witnesses and cold case detectives. Families finally began speaking out, demanding that their loved ones be remembered as more than just prostitutes. As of 2026, the monster of Udine is still unidentified, but there is fresh hope. Italian authorities quietly reopened the cold case files in 2024 using modern genetic genealogy techniques, preserved evidence from the 1983 and 1985 victims, clothing fibers, ligature marks, and even a few biological traces, has been sent for advanced testing at a national forensic lab in Rome. No official breakthroughs have been announced yet, but sources close to the investigation say partial DNA profiles have been developed and are being compared against national databases and international ones through Interpol. The Carabinieri in Udine continue to receive occasional tips, and a dedicated cold case team now reviews the files every 6 months. Some believe the killer is long dead, his secrets buried with him. Others hold out hope that genetic genealogy, which has solved so many decades-old cases around the world, will finally name the monster of Udine. The women he murdered were mothers, daughters, sisters, and friends who worked the streets simply to survive. Their names, Luana Giampercaro, Aurelia Januszewicz, and the many others lost to time, deserve to be remembered. Small memorials now stand in the fields where some bodies were found, and local historians have begun archiving their stories. The foggy countryside around Udine still feels haunted by those nights when a polite stranger in a car turned into a nightmare. This forgotten Italian monster proves that some predators thrive in silence, especially when their victims are those society chooses to overlook. The fields and ditches around Udine still hold their secrets, waiting for the day the monster's name is finally spoken. If you have any thoughts or leads, drop them in the comments, and if this chilled you to the bone, hit that like button, subscribe for more mysteries, and comment below. Until next time, stay vigilant in the shadows. Welcome to True Night Crime, where we dive deep into the shadows of real mysteries that still haunt us today. Tonight we travel to the quiet, winding roads and dense woods along the Connecticut River Valley in New England for one of the most chilling unsolved serial cases of the 1980s. The Connecticut River Valley Killer. Between 1978 and 1987, at least 7 young women were brutally stabbed to death in a tight 50-mile radius straddling the New Hampshire-Vermont border. Their bodies were dumped in remote woodlands, wetlands, and riverbanks near Interstate 91, a corridor that should have felt safe but instead became a corridor of death. The killer struck with shocking savagery, multiple deep stab wounds, often to the neck and abdomen, yet left almost no forensic clues in an era before widespread DNA testing. Families were shattered, communities lived in fear, and one woman fought back to become the only known survivor. More than 40 years later, the case remains open, with fresh searches and survivor voices keeping the pressure on. Was it one methodical predator who knew the back roads, like the back of his hand? Or did overlapping tragedies create the illusion of a single monster? Let's walk the valley's blood-stained trails and search for answers that have stayed hidden far too long. The terror began on a crisp autumn afternoon in 1978. 27-year-old Kathy Milliken worked in marketing for a publishing company in Concord, New Hampshire. On October 24th, she drove to the peaceful Chandler Brook Wetland Preserve in New London to photograph birds, something she loved. She was never seen alive again. The next day, her body was found partially hidden in the marshy undergrowth. She had been stabbed more than 30 times in the neck and abdomen. The attack was ferocious, yet there were no signs of sexual assault or robbery. Police found her camera nearby, film still inside, as if the killer had interrupted her peaceful afternoon without warning. The case stunned the small town, but at first it seemed like a horrific one-off. 3 years passed before the pattern began to emerge. On July 25, 1981, 37-year-old Mary Elizabeth Betsy Critchley, a University of Vermont student, was hitchhiking near the Massachusetts-Vermont border after visiting friends. She was last seen getting into a vehicle near Interstate 91. 2 weeks later, on August 9th, her decomposed body was discovered in a wooded area off Unity Stage Road in Unity, New Hampshire, about 80 miles from where she vanished. The cause of death could not be definitively determined due to decomposition, but investigators noted similarities to Kathy Milliken's wounds. Again, no robbery, no sexual motive that could be confirmed. 2 women, same brutal stabbing style, same general region near the river valley. Still, authorities hesitated to connect them publicly. The killer grew bolder. On May 30, 1984, 17-year-old Bernice Court-Manche, a high school student and part-time nurse's aide, left her boyfriend's home in Claremont, New Hampshire, planning to hitchhike the 12 miles to Newport. She was never seen again. Her skeletal remains were found nearly 2 years later, on April 9, 1986, by a fisherman near the Sugar River in Newport. Her throat had been slit, and she had been stabbed multiple times in the chest. Evidence suggested she had also been beaten about the head. Just weeks earlier, on April 10, 1985, 27-year-old Ellen Ruth Fried had disappeared after stopping at a gas station in Claremont. Her remains were discovered in September 1985 in the woods near Kellyville, only a few miles from where Bernice's would later be found. The pattern was now unmistakable. Young women, often hitchhikers or out alone, stabbed repeatedly, bodies left in remote spots the killer clearly knew well. The spring of 1986 brought a horrifying cluster. On April 15, 36-year-old Linda Moore was doing yard work outside her home in Saxton's River, Vermont, while her husband was at work. When he returned that evening, he found her dead in the living room, stabbed 25 times in a scene that showed a fierce struggle. No forced entry, nothing stolen. Just 4 days later, Bernice Courtemanche's remains were recovered, and on April 25th, Eva Morse, a 31-year-old mother from West Unity, New Hampshire, vanished after leaving a friend's house. Her body was found stabbed to death in a wooded area nearby. The valley was now gripped by fear. Women avoided traveling alone, hitchhiking stopped almost completely, and local newspapers warned of a predator stalking the I-91 corridor. The final confirmed victim came in March 1987. 40-year-old Barbara Agnew, a nurse from Lebanon, New Hampshire, disappeared after a day of skiing. Her car was found abandoned at an I-91 rest area in White River Junction, Vermont, with blood on the steering wheel. Her body was discovered weeks later in the woods in Heartland, Vermont, stabbed repeatedly. The killings then appeared to stop as suddenly as they had begun. But the story has one extraordinary chapter. On August 6, 1988, 22-year-old Jane Borowski was 7 months pregnant and stopped at a roadside stand in Claremont, New Hampshire. A man in a pickup truck pulled up, got out, and attacked her without warning. He stabbed her 27 times before fleeing. Jane fought desperately, protecting her unborn child, and miraculously survived. She is the only known survivor and has spent decades speaking out, describing her attacker as calm and methodical. Her survival gave investigators a living witness and a possible description, yet the killer was never caught. The investigation was plagued by jurisdictional issues. The crimes crossed New Hampshire and Vermont lines, and by the limitations of 1980s forensics. No usable DNA was recovered from most scenes. Hundreds of tips were followed, but leads went cold. Over the years, several suspects have been scrutinized. Private investigator Lynn Marie Carty once named Michael Nicolau, a violent criminal who died by suicide in 2005 after killing his wife and stepdaughter. Some of his movements overlapped with the crimes, but no hard evidence linked him. Gary Schaefer, a convicted killer active in the same region and time period, was examined but ultimately ruled out for these cases. In May 2024, New Hampshire Cold Case Unit investigators executed a search warrant at a home in Newport owned by a longtime local man who had been questioned before. Evidence was reportedly removed, but no charges have been filed. As of early 2026, the case remains active with the New Hampshire Attorney General's Cold Case Unit and Vermont State Police. Jane Borowski continues to advocate, reminding everyone that the killer may still be out there, or may have died with his secrets. The Connecticut River Valley killer claimed at least 7 lives and left one survivor forever changed. Kathy Milliken, Betsy Critchley, Bernice Courtemanche, Ellen Freed, Linda Moore, Eva Morse, and Barbara Agnew were mothers, daughters, students, and workers whose only mistake was being in the wrong place at the wrong time along a beautiful but deadly stretch of river. Their stories remind us how easily evil can hide in plain sight, especially in quiet rural corners where people once felt safe. The valley is peaceful again today, but the scars run deep. If you have any thoughts or leads, drop them in the comments, and if this chilled you to the bone, hit that like button, subscribe for more mysteries, and comment below. Until next time, stay vigilant in the shadows. Welcome to True Night Crime, where we dive deep into the shadows of real mysteries that still haunt us today. True crime junkies, brace yourselves. This one's a gut-wrencher straight from the heartland's darkest nightmare, the Oklahoma Girl Scout murders of 1977. Picture this: a starry, summer night at a remote Girl Scout camp, giggles echoing through the woods as innocent kids settle into tents for their first big adventure. But by dawn, 3 little girls lie slaughtered in a blood-soaked tent, their bodies violated in ways that defy humanity. A massive manhunt, a controversial trial, a suspect who walked free, only to die suspiciously. And over 45 years later, DNA twists that scream guilt, yet the case hangs unsolved like a noose in the wind. Was it a local fugitive with a grudge, a ritualistic killer lurking in the shadows, or a cover-up that protected the wrong man? Strap in, sleuths. This Camp Scott tragedy will keep you up at night, questioning every rustle in the dark. Let's unpack the horror that turned a summer camp into a slaughterhouse and left Oklahoma scarred forever. Camp Scott, nestled in the rolling hills of Mays County, Oklahoma, was a Girl Scout paradise, 500 acres of woods, lakes and cabins where troops from Tulsa built fires, sang songs and forged lifelong bonds. In June 1977, it buzzed with excitement as over 100 girls arrived for the season's kickoff. Among them, 8-year-old Lori Lee Farmer, a bright-eyed farm girl from Tulsa with a love for animals, 9-year-old Michelle Heather Goose, a spunky tomboy who adored softball, and 10-year-old Doris Denise R. de Buenstaren and now is Dean. A sweet, shy kid from a big family dreaming of becoming a doctor. The trio, strangers before camp, bunked together in tent number 8 of the Kiowa unit, farthest from the counselors, tucked in the woods for that authentic adventure feel. On June 12th, their first night, a thunderstorm rolled in, but the girls laughed it off, whispering secrets under flashlights. Little did anyone know, evil was already circling. Warnings had flickered like fireflies before the storm. Weeks earlier, a counselor found a cryptic note in a donut box during training. "We are going to kill 3 girls," dismissed as a prank. That night, strange noises, moans, footsteps, echoed around the camp. One counselor shone her light into the trees, spotting a shadowy figure that vanished. Another heard guttural growls. By morning, June 13th, the camp stirred to horror. Counselor Carla Wilhite, heading to wake the girls, spotted a bloodied sleeping bag dragged into the woods near tent number 8. Peering inside the flap, a scene from hell. Lori, Michelle, and Denise lay bludgeoned and strangled, their small bodies crammed into one bag. All 3 had been beaten. Blood soaked the tent floor, handprints smeared the walls. The killer had struck silently, methodically, under cover of thunder. Panic exploded. Campers were evacuated in buses, parents notified in hushed terror. The Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation, OSBI, swarmed the scene, but rain had washed away footprints, clues. A bloody fingerprint on the tent, never matched. A roll of duct tape, a flashlight with a woman's hair, possibly from a counselor, and eerie eyeglasses left behind. No forced entry. The killer slipped in like a ghost. Autopsies revealed the girls died between 1 and 3 a.m., assaulted in the tent before being dragged out. The community reeled. Girl Scouts symbolized innocence. This defiled it. Rumors flew. Satanic cult, pedophile ring, or a vengeful local. Eyes quickly turned to Jean Leroy Hart, a 33-year-old Cherokee fugitive from nearby Locust Grove, convicted of raping 2 pregnant women in 1969, binding and gagging them. Hart escaped prison in 1973, evading capture for years with help from sympathetic locals who saw him as a folk hero framed by white man's justice. He knew the area intimately. Camp Scott was on Cherokee land, and Hart had scouted it before. Tips poured in. Sightings near the camp pre-murders, his glasses matching the crime scene pair, though disputed. After a 10-month manhunt, the largest in Oklahoma history, Hart was captured in a remote cabin on April 6, 1978, looking gaunt but defiant. The 1979 trial was a circus. Prosecutors painted Hart as a monster, linking him via hair evidence. A pubic hair matched his, per experts, and witness testimonies of him near the camp. Defense argued frame-up, the glasses were planted, hairs inconclusive, 1970s forensics were shaky. And no fingerprints or DNA tied him. Hart's alibi. Hiding with friends. Shockingly, the all-white jury acquitted him after 6 hours. Many cited reasonable doubt and racial bias whispers. Hart returned to prison for prior crimes, dying of a heart attack on June 4, 1979, at 35. Suicide? Poison? The farmer's family suspected foul play to silence him, but doubts lingered. Was Hart guilty or innocent, as his supporters claimed? The case went cold, haunted by botched evidence, lost fingerprints, contaminated scenes. Families grieved. Lori's parents founded a victims advocacy group. Michelle's mom passed without closure. Denise's family fought for answers. Theories exploded. A camp counselor with a grudge. a satanic group, odd symbols found nearby, even links to other killers like William Bonin or the Zodiac. Decades passed, but true crime spotlight revived it. The 2022 Hulu docuseries Keeper of the Ashes dug deep, featuring survivor stories and new interviews. That year, OSB announced breakthrough DNA from preserved evidence, strongly implicating Hart as the sole killer, matching profiles from the scene to him alone. Sheriff Mike Reed declared it would have convicted him today. Yet, officially, the case remains unsolved, no formal closure, as families and OSBI debate next steps. In 2023, the McGirt ruling prompted a jurisdictional review. Hart was Cherokee, camp on tribal land, but no reopen. As of 2026, with genetic genealogy advancing, OSBI retests items, but no new suspects. A 2025 podcast Camp of Nightmares unearthed tips, yielding nothing concrete. Memorials at the former Camp Scott, now abandoned, overgrown, and legendarily haunted, honor the girls annually. True crime obsessives, this case hits hard. Innocence shattered in a tent, a suspect who beat the rap but couldn't escape suspicion, and DNA screaming guilt from the grave. The Oklahoma Girl Scout murders remind us evil preys on the vulnerable, leaving echoes that never fade. If you have any thoughts or leads, drop them in the comments. And if this chilled you to the bone, hit that like button, subscribe for more mysteries, and comment below. Until next time, stay vigilant in the shadows.
Welcome to True Night Crime, where we dive deep into the shadows of real mysteries that still haunt us today. Buckle up, true crime aficionados, because tonight we're hitchhiking straight into the heart of darkness. The Santa Rosa Hitchhiker Murders, California's bone-chilling 1970s nightmare that turned the Golden State's open roads into a predator's playground. Imagine this: young girls with dreams in their eyes, thumbs out under the California sun, vanishing into thin air, only to resurface as broken, bound corpses in desolate ravines. 7 confirmed victims, all eerily similar, nude, hogtied, dumped like yesterday's trash. Was this the Zodiac's encore? Ted Bundy's side gig? Or a homegrown monster who knew Sonoma County's back roads like a twisted roadmap to hell? Over 50 years unsolved, with bodies posed in mocking defiance and no DNA miracles yet, this case will grip your soul and leave you questioning every shadow on the highway. Get ready for a ride through suspense, speculation, and sheer terror. Let's unravel the hitchhiker horror that still sends shivers down spines. Picture Santa Rosa in the groovy early 70s, a blossoming suburb just north of San Francisco, where flower power met wine country vibes. Hippies hitched rides without a second thought, bell-bottoms flapping in the breeze along US 101. Freedom was in the air, but so was something sinister. Our story kicks off on a fateful Friday, February 4th, 1972. 2 middle school besties, Maureen Louise Sterling and Yvonne Lisa Weber, 12 and 13 years old, full of giggles and innocence, head out for a night at the Redwood Empire Ice Arena. They wave goodbye to their families, never imagining it would be forever. Months drag on with desperate searches, flyers plastered everywhere. Then, bam, December 28th, hikers stumble into a nightmare in a remote ravine off Franz Valley Road. Skeletal remains, nude, wrists and ankles bound with plastic cord. Strangled, no doubt. No clothes, no clues, just 2 girls discarded like forgotten luggage. True crime junkies, feel that chill. This was no random act. It was the opening salvo in a spree that would claim more young lives. The killer didn't waste time. Just a month later, on March 4th, 19-year-old Kim Wendy Allen, a vibrant Santa Rosa junior college student, part-time grocery clerk with a zest for life, thumbs a ride north on Highway 101 after her shift. Witnesses spot her near Cotati around 5 p.m., hopping into a car. The next day, her body turns up in a creek bed off Enterprise Road, bound with clothesline, strangled by a cord so tight it bit into her skin. But here's the gruesome twist that hooks every true crime obsessive. She was raped, tortured with superficial cuts like some sadistic artist's strokes. Defensive wounds scream she fought like hell. Dirt under her nails, bruises everywhere. And those missing earrings? Trophies for a monster's collection. No semen, no prints, just pure, calculated evil. Was he watching her, stalking his prey on the highway? The body count climbs. each one more heart-wrenching. Fast forward to November 21st, 1972. 13-year-old Lori Lee Cursa, a feisty runaway known for hitching around Santa Rosa, vanishes after a quick store run. 3 weeks later, her nude body crashes into view off Calistoga Road. Neck snapped, likely hurled from an embankment mid-struggle. No bindings this time, but the dump site echoes the others. Then there's 20-year-old Jeanette Kamahele, another college kid, vanishing April 25, 1972, while hitching from campus, last seen climbing into a van with a white guy. Her body? Still missing, but the profile fits like a glove. True crime sleuths. Imagine the panic. Parents locking doors, hitchhiking bans whispered in schools. Yet the killer lurks, unseen. Enter 1973, and the horror twists darker. 14-year-old Carolyn Nadine Davis, another runaway thumbing from Garberville, disappears July 15th. Her remains surface July 31st off Franz Valley Road, same spot as the first girls. Nude, bound, but poisoned with strychnine, that's the curveball that keeps podcasters up at night. A rat poison overdose suggesting experimentation, like a lab rat in the killer's game. No stabs, just agony. Finally, 23-year-old Therese Walsh hitchhikes from Garberville to Malibu on December 22, 1973. 6 days later, she's fished from Mark West Creek, hogtied with nylon rope, strangled and drowned alive after being tossed in bound. Water in her lungs confirms the terror. She struggled underwater, gasping for life. 7 victims, all young, all linked by highways and horror. Posed degradingly, bound similarly, dumped in Sonoma's wilds. No consistent rape, but the humiliation? Palpable. Sonoma County exploded into investigation mode. Task forces, FBI involvement, but 70s tech was a joke. No DNA, just tire tracks and size 10-11 footprints that mock detectives. Over 200 suspects grilled, media frenzy dubbing him the embankment killer. Connections to legends. The Zodiac, active nearby. Same cryptic dump sites, but no taunting letters. Ted Bundy confessed to Cali kills, but his bludgeon and bite style doesn't match, and timelines wobble. Local creeps, Arthur Lee Allen, Zodiac suspect, lived in Santa Rosa, molested kids, creepy, but no proof. Fred Manali, a teacher who died 76, penned erotic tales of bound girls. Jack Boken, convicted murderer, cleared. But hold on, true crime diehards, 2024 dropped a bombshell. Victoria Holt fingers her great-uncle Joseph James Holt, died in 94, as the Fiend. He lived in Santa Rosa then, violent past, family whispers of kept jewelry trophies. Grave exhumed for DNA, results pending in 2026. Could this crack it, or is it another dead end? Theories swirl, trucker on 101, cop pulling over girls, or Zodiac's evolution. Sonoma Sheriff's keeps it active, retesting ropes and fibers with genetic genealogy. 2025 podcast Roadside Shadows and book Thumbs Down, unearthed tips, no arrests yet. These girls, Maureen, Yvonne, Kim, Lori, Jeanette, Carolyn, Therese, were dreamers, rebels, innocents. Their killer stole futures, vanishing like fog on the bay. Santa Rosa's roads now worn against hitching, memorials bloom at dump sites. This case? Pure true crime gold. Suspense, suspects, what-ifs. If you have any thoughts or leads, drop them in the comments. And if this chilled you to the bone, hit that like button, subscribe for more mysteries, and comment below. Until next time, stay vigilant in the shadows.
Welcome to True Night Crime, where we dive deep into the shadows of real mysteries that still haunt us today. True crime devotees, prepare for a descent into the majestic yet malevolent wilderness of one of America's most iconic national parks, the Yosemite Murders. Cary Stayner's chilling 1999 killing spree that turned breathtaking vistas into blood-stained nightmares. Imagine the irony, a handyman blending seamlessly into Yosemite's serene beauty, harboring fantasies of domination and death. preying on unsuspecting women amid granite cliffs and ancient sequoias. 4 victims slaughtered in a frenzy of rage and ritual, their bodies discarded like park trash. But the twist that hooks every true crime obsessive. The killer was the brother of a famous kidnap victim, a man whose family tragedy masked his own monstrous evolution. Over 2 decades unsolved until a shocking confession, with echoes of Bundy and the Zodiac, this case layers familial curse, psychological abyss, and investigative blunders. Strap in, sleuths. This Yosemite horror will have you eyeing every friendly ranger with suspicion, pondering if paradise always hides a predator. Yosemite National Park in the late 1990s was a hiker's heaven, over 4 million visitors annually flocking to its towering waterfalls, lush meadows, and granite monoliths like El Capitan. But beneath the postcard perfection lurked isolation, where cell signals faded and screams echoed unheard. Enter Carrie Anthony Stainer, a 37-year-old maintenance worker at the Cedar Lodge Motel just outside the park's gates. Unassuming, polite, with a boyish charm, guests tipped him for fixing sinks. But Stainer harbored dark secrets. Childhood trauma from his brother Stephen's infamous 1972 kidnapping, held captive for 7 years by a pedophile. Plus his own fantasies of rape and murder dating back to adolescence. He sketched violent scenes, collected true crime books, and later confessed to decapitating fantasies since age 7. True crime fans, feel the chill? This wasn't a sudden snap. It was a volcano simmering for decades. The spree ignited on February 15, 1999, a President's Day weekend buzzing with tourists. Carol Sund, 42, a vibrant real estate agent and philanthropist from Eureka, California, was vacationing with her 15-year-old daughter Julie, a bubbly cheerleader with dreams of becoming a botanist, and Julie's Argentine exchange student friend, 16-year-old Silvina Palazzo, a sweet, artistic teen on her first big American adventure. The trio checked into room 509 at Cedar Lodge after a day exploring Yosemite's wonders. That night, Stainer, working the late shift, knocked on their door, claiming a leak in the room above. Once inside, he pulled a gun, bound them with duct tape, and strangled Carol in the bathroom with a rope. He then sexually assaulted and strangled Silvina. Loading their bodies into the Pontiac rental car's trunk, he drove Hooley to a remote vista point near Don Pedro Reservoir, where he raped her, slashed her throat, and left her nude body in the brush. The precision? Bone-chilling. Stainer cleaned the room meticulously, even vacuuming and wiping prints. True crime addicts, imagine the audacity, a killer tidying up like it's just another motel chore. The disappearance sparked a massive search. The Sons were a prominent family. Carol's husband Francis launched the Carol Son Carrington Memorial Reward Foundation, offering $250,000 for info. FBI profiled an organized killer, possibly a drifter. Clues trickled. The Pontiac, found burned in Long Barn, California, on February 19th, with Carol and Silvina's charred remains inside. Julie's body discovered March 25th near the reservoir, throat cut so deeply it nearly decapitated her. Media frenzied dubbed it the Yosemite Murders, drawing Zodiac comparisons due to the park's proximity to his haunts. But Stainer, he played the concerned employee, even attending vigils. Whispers of park rangers or transients filled headlines, but the case stalled until summer brought fresh blood. On July 21, 1999, 26-year-old Joey Ruth Armstrong, a passionate naturalist and Yosemite Institute educator, vanished from her cabin in Foresta, inside the park. Known for her infectious energy and love of the outdoors, she led kids on nature hikes. Joey was last seen packing for a trip. Her decapitated body was found the next day in a creek near her home, head floating nearby, with defensive wounds suggesting a fierce fight. Stainer, staying nearby for work, had spotted her alone. He confessed later. He bound her, strangled her during an assault, then beheaded her to take her head as a trophy, but panicked and dumped it. This time witnesses saw his blue International Scout SUV fleeing the scene. FBI traced it to Stainer at a nudist resort in Wilton, where he was arrested July 23, calmly sipping a drink, claiming innocence at first. The confession? A true crime bombshell. In a 4-hour interview, Stainer spilled everything, not just Joey, but the Sun trio too. He detailed the acts with detached precision, admitting voices in his head urged him on since childhood. It was like a fantasy that became reality, he said. Motive, power, control, no remorse. Searches of his home uncovered bondage porn, knives, and a backpack with rope. But here's the jaw-dropper for sleuths. Stainer claimed more victims, including his uncle Jerry, in 1990, shot during a fantasy gone wrong, and possibly others. Prosecutors focused on the four, charging him with capital murder. The trials were spectacles: federal for Joy's park killing, death penalty sought, state for the Soons. Stainer pleaded guilty to Joy's murder in 2001, sentenced to life without parole. For the Soons, he claimed insanity, schizophrenia from family trauma, but experts deemed him sane. Convicted in 2002, he got death. As of 2026, Stainer, now 64, rots on San Quentin's death row, appeals exhausted after a 2023 denial. He grants rare interviews, expressing regret, but no tears. True crime. Twist. Stephen Stainer died in a 1989 motorcycle crash. Another brother attempted suicide. Family curse or genetic darkness? Theories persist for diehards. Was Stainer the sole killer, or did accomplices help? Some link him to unsolved Yosemite vanishings, like the 1981 disappearance of Stacey Harris. Investigations cleared him of others, but whispers linger. Modern forensics. In 2024, enhanced DNA from Joy scene reaffirmed his guilt, but no new leads on potentials. A 2025 Netflix doc, Shadows of Yosemite, featured survivor simulations and family interviews, sparking tips, but nothing stuck. Memorials honor the victims. A Yosemite Trail for Joy, scholarships for the sons. Camp Scott's Echoes? Wait, wrong case. This is Yosemite's Scar, a reminder that even nature's cathedrals hide human horrors. True crime lovers, this spree blends park paradise with primal evil, family tragedy with forensic triumphs. Stainer's face, ordinary, unassuming, haunts like a mirror to the monsters among us. If you have any thoughts or leads, drop them in the comments. And if this chilled you to the bone, hit that like button, subscribe for more mysteries, and comment below. Until next time, stay vigilant in the shadows. Welcome to True Night Crime, where we dive deep into the shadows of real mysteries that still haunt us today. True crime obsessives, get ready for a journey into the heart of America's conservative underbelly, where faith and fear collide in a string of horrors. The Bible Belt Strangler, the elusive killer behind the infamous redhead murders of the 1970s to 1990s. Imagine red-haired women, vulnerable, often hitchhikers or sex workers, plucked from the highways of the South, strangled, dumped in ditches like forgotten roadside litter, their bodies left as silent screams amid Bible-thumping towns. Up to 14 victims across Tennessee, Kentucky, Arkansas, and beyond, all sharing that fiery hair color, all meeting brutal ends in a spree that evaded cops for decades. No confessions in the 1990s, but a posthumous finger pointed at a sadistic trucker who choked women for sport. Was this a vigilante purging sinners from the Bible Belt? A copycat echoing other Southern slayers? Or a lone wolf whose secrets died with him? Over 40 years unsolved, with student sleuths cracking clues in 2018 and DNA whispers still teasing justice, this case will grip you like a garrote, blending Southern Gothic terror with investigative intrigue. Buckle up, detectives. This strangler's shadow stretches long, proving the Bible Belt's piety hid a beast that preyed on the overlooked. The Bible Belt in the late 1970s and 1980s was a land of revivals, rolling hills, and rural highways, a place where church steeples dotted the skyline and Jesus Saves signs flanked the interstates, but beneath the veneer of moral uprightness lurked poverty, vice, and violence. Hitchhiking was common for young women down on their luck, sex work thrived in truck stops, and red hair, a striking trait, made some stand out like beacons. The murders started subtly, blending into the era's high homicide rates. The first linked victim surfaced in 1978, but the core spree hit between 1983 and 1985, with bodies turning up in Tennessee, Kentucky, Arkansas, Mississippi, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia. Authorities estimate 5 to 14 victims, all white women aged 17 to 45, mostly with red or auburn hair, strangled and discarded along major roads like I-40 or I-75. No sexual assault in many cases, no robbery, just death by ligature or manual choking, bodies posed or hidden in undergrowth. True crime fans, here's the eerie hook. The killer seemed to select for that red hair, earning the moniker Redhead Murders, but the Bible Belt Strangler tag came from the religious heartland setting, fueling theories of a moral crusader cleansing sinners. Let's meet the victims who brought this phantom into focus, each one a puzzle piece in a macabre mosaic. Start with Lisa Nichols, 28, a truck stop worker from West Virginia. On September 16, 1984, her nude body was found along I-40 in Barron County, Kentucky, strangled, red hair matted with blood dumped like roadkill. Then Michelle Inman, 24, discovered in 1985 near Greenville, Tennessee, strangled and left in a ditch. Tina McKinney Farmer, 28, vanished from a Chattanooga truck stop on June 2, 1985. Her body turned up days later in Campbell County, Tennessee, bound, strangled, with signs of torture. Elizabeth Lamott, 17, a runaway from Manchester, New Hampshire, last seen hitchhiking in Tennessee in April 1985. Her remains found in Greene County that September, strangled. Tracy Walker, 24, disappeared from a Lafayette, Indiana truck stop in 1985, body in Putnam County, Indiana, strangled. And an unidentified Campbell County Jane Doe, a young redhead found in 1985 near Jellicoe, Tennessee, strangled, possibly the youngest at 15 years old. More potential victims: Linda Shack in 1981, S.B. Pilgrim in 1984, an unidentified woman in 1985 Arkansas, and others up to 1992. All redheads, all strangled, all dumped near highways. Coincidence? Or a signature that screams serial killer? The investigation was a true crime tragedy, fragmented across states, with local cops overwhelmed and FBI involvement spotty. In 1985, a multi-agency task force formed in Tennessee, chasing leads like tire tracks and ligature marks, but pre-DNA era meant no breakthroughs. Witnesses described a middle-aged white man in a truck or van, polite but predatory, picking up women at rest stops. Media frenzy dubbed it the redhead murders, amplifying fear. Women dyed their hair, avoided hitching, truckers locked cabs. But by 1986, bodies stopped appearing. Did the killer die, move, get caught for something else? The case went cold, files gathering dust as families begged for justice. Theories ran wild, delighting armchair detectives, a moral vigilante punishing prostitutes in the godly Bible Belt, links to the monster of Florence or truck stop killer Bruce Mendenhall, arrested 2007, confessed to some but not all, or a long-haul trucker like Robert Ben Rhodes cruising I-40. True crime gold. Some bodies had surgical-like incisions, hinting at a medical background. Pennsylvania and West Virginia dumps suggested a route driver. No 1990s confessions, but whispers of jailhouse boasts never panned out. The revival came in 2018, a plot twist straight from a thriller. 20 students at Elizabethton High School in Tennessee, for sociology teacher Alex Campbell's class project, dove into cold cases. They connected 6 victims via patterns: red hair, strangulation, highway dumps, and dubbed the killer the Bible Belt Strangler for the religious region. They profiled him: white male, 30-50 during killings, trucker or salesman familiar with routes, possible religious motive. Bombshell, they identified Tina McKinney Farmer, missing from Indiana, via fingerprints and photos. Their work went viral, prompting TBI and FBI to reopen files. In 2019, authorities named Jerry Leon Johns as the prime suspect. Johns, a Kentucky trucker born 1943, died in prison 2015 while serving for a 1985 attempted murder, strangling a prostitute in Knox County, Tennessee, dumping her nude. Matches the MO perfectly. Students linked him to McKinney Farmer's murder via timelines, routes, and similarities. In 2019, a grand jury heard evidence. Though Johns was dead, they concluded he'd be indicted for first-degree murder if alive. No confession from Johns. He denied everything, but his crimes fit like a glove. As of 2026, DNA from victims is retested against Johns' relatives via genetic genealogy, but degradation challenges persist. TBI calls it active, with potential for more links. This Strangler's legacy, a stark true crime cautionary tale of overlooked women in America's heartland, where piety masked peril. The redheads, Lisa, Michelle, Tina, Elizabeth, Tracy, and more, were daughters, sisters, dreamers discarded. Student heroes breathe life into their stories. But the Bible Belt's shadows linger. If Johns was the monster, why no confession? Or was there a copycat? The highways whisper unanswered. If you have any thoughts or leads, drop them in the comments. And if this chilled you to the bone, hit that like button, subscribe for more mysteries, and comment below. Until next time, stay vigilant in the shadows.